call us to this gathering. Please join me in saying today's chalice lighting words, which are in your order of service.
We light this
Flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be fair and loving. And in loving, may we find peace. And now, our opening words.
I do have opening words, but I am so knocked out by this new configuration of chairs that I'm reminded of a Middle Eastern story about 3 sons who inherited 17 camels. Now, if you will think about the way the chairs are configured in the room right now, you'll realize that both Alan Perkinson and Greg Davis made A's in geometry when they were in high school. But the story that I want to tell from the Middle East is about 3 sons who inherited 17 camels. And they were absolutely distraught as to how to divide them, because George Baymorty knows this story, because the eldest son was to get half, but they couldn't figure out what half of 17 was. The next oldest son was to get 6, but they couldn't figure out what half of, I'm sorry, was supposed to get a third, but they couldn't figure out what a third of 17 was. And the youngest was to get a 6th because they couldn't figure out. This is very hard for me. It involves math. And I've been frantically doing math over here while the service was coming together. So they went to a wise man in their community, and he said, I'll give you a camel to make everything come out right. So now they had 18 camels. Half of 18 is 9. A third of 18 is 6, and a sixth of 18 is 2. And it left 1 left over to give back to the wise man. Did I get the math wrong, Susan? A third of 18 is not 6. 3 times 6 is not 18. Okay, being Unitarians, we will have a committee meeting after the service.
It has to be during a potluck.
To check the math. Our opening words come from Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word.
And now please stay seated as Teresa plays some music to center us for the message today.
This is from a book I have called African American Songs and Spirituals. And it's one I wasn't familiar with, but I think in this song probably the idea of heaven is a metaphor for freedom. All over this world, all over this world, all over this world, all over this world. All my troubles will soon be over with, soon be over with, soon be over with. All my troubles will soon be over with, all over this world. All over this world, all over this world, all over this world, all over this world. All black fighting will soon be over with, soon be over with, soon be over with. All black fighting will soon be over with, all over this world. All over will soon be over with, soon be over with. Weeping and the mourning will soon be over with, all over this world. 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 All my troubles will soon be over with, soon be over with, soon be over with. All my troubles will soon be over with, all over this world. All over this world. All over this world. All over this world. All over this world.
Now, Reverend Pat. One sec, Pat.
Okay, this is the 8th principle as has been adopted by several hundred congregations throughout our association. It reads this way: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions, and that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. You need to understand that this has been controversial. There have been congregations who have split over the vote to adopt this principle. And Veronique has asked us to vote on it at our annual meeting in December on whether we want to adopt it or not. I think the people who are against this principle believe that we don't need it. The congregation at Lake Norman is so cooperative, so harmonious, I am reluctant to throw anything into the mix that might have us getting into a fight. Congregations have split over civil rights and LGBTQ equality. We had a first-time visitor in mid-October who felt some of our political language is too political. Lincoln said you can't please all the people all the time. And I guess we will always rest on the horns of that dilemma. One of our running jokes is that Unitarian Universalists are accepting of everybody except those people who are not accepting of everybody. We don't like them worth a hoot. But here's one that can really rile people up. I'm not racist, but. After the but comes a litany of all the racial stereotypes. I won't offer them here because honestly, they are so offensive and we don't need that stuff floating in the air. You know them though. I'm not a racist, but. Fill in the blank. Here's one I haven't heard a time or two. I'm not a racist, but have you ever noticed how all white people fill in the blank? Do you feel it? Are there memories coming to you? Okay, let's circle back to I don't see race. Don't say that. That one is almost too awful to mention because it really fouls the water. Race is everywhere and in everything. I interviewed Jim Clyburn years ago. He's among the ranking Democrats in the U.S. House and a long-serving member and an African American. He said, race is the only thing. Of course, we would argue that gender and poverty and sexual orientation are pretty darn important too. But he told awful story after awful story to illustrate his point. As an 8-year-old boy, he watched his father beaten by a group of white men. At the risk of making some of you mad, I got to beg you, please don't ever say you don't see race or you don't see color. Because if you don't see race, you don't see racism. If that makes you mad, we can talk about it during the talk back. But you can see how the 8th principle has divided congregations. This talk has already stepped on somebody's toes, and I'm sorry about that. In fact, we're 5 minutes into this talk, and some of you are already fired up. Even though you rarely hear me talk about it, I have been involved in the civil rights struggle since high school. I even very briefly served as president of the African American Student Association in my high school for 10 days. And then another meeting was held, and another group of black students came in and asked the ones who had elected me, "Have y'all lost your minds?" I demonstrated and campaigned for black candidates for elective office. I campaigned for Howard Lee when he ran for lieutenant governor in North Carolina in 1976. And as I was standing soliciting votes for him as voters came in and out of the polls, a man stood across from me and began staring. I was wearing Howard Lee's name on my hat. Finally, I asked him, I said, "Sir, are you supporting Mayor Lee for lieutenant governor of North Carolina?" He said, "No, son, I just don't ever want to forget what you look like." I've written articles in the newspaper that had at least one white supremacist back me against the wall and poke me in the chest for what I had written. I served for 2 years on the board of Unity and Community here in North Mecklenburg. That's an organization that Greg and Natalie and Harvey support. And we can all four tell you this is not easy work. Just 400 years after the first African slaves came ashore at Jamestown, we are nowhere near dismantling racism. Let me read it again. And at our annual meeting in December, we will be asked to vote whether it will be part of our purpose as we move forward. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in others. It's not easy stuff. I haven't even mentioned white privilege because I know that's another spark plug of controversy. Maybe we can talk about that another day. I've had so many of these conversations. I have been plunged so deeply into the remaining hurt and fear and ongoing racism of our current evil government. Some of you may remember that a few years ago, I had an email exchange with a member of the Sons of the Confederacy. He tried to be very accommodating to me. He even invited me to his home for a meal. He tried to be very reasonable, even-handed. But when I asked him if he doesn't still believe that the scar of racism remains, he became incensed. The anger poured off of his email as he raged back at me. "How can you say such a thing when we have had a black president, when black athletes and entertainers make millions of dollars? How can you be so stupid?" That was the end of our relationship. I know this is hard work. I know some of you are confused by everything you have heard here and now, but please believe me when I say I'd rather take a beating than disturb the harmony of this congregation. On the other hand, we cannot ignore racism any more than we can ignore race. It is a cultural construct designed by powerful people to maintain their power. Lyndon Johnson may have said it best, a quote that was used in the final scene of the movie Selma. Johnson said, "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, he'll give somebody to look down. You give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you." Okay, let's talk about it. Who put that there?
This is the part of our service where you're invited to offer your thoughts, comments, and questions, controversial or not, about today's theme and sermon. Please use the microphone so everyone can hear.
Hi, I'm a frequent guest on Babs. Your opening words, Martin Luther King, are words of hope. And so I'd like to relay to you a personal story. I worked in an environment, it was a homeless shelter in Boston, and I had an occasion where a coworker, I was talking about one of the clients, and a coworker said to me, is she Black? And I had to think for a moment whether she was Black or not. That gave me hope that if you have great interactions with people, if you have compassionate interactions with people, that perhaps we on occasion or eventually can get to the point where when someone asks us the question, is she Black? Is he Black? We have to think, because that wasn't the primary thought in our head.
Well, Pat, I think I've decided to support the amendment and its intent, and that'll be my vote.
Well, of course, when it comes to the whole idea about racism and all the rest of the stuff, obviously it's something that I've been dealing with all my life. However, I think at this point, while we talk about racism and the whole bad stuff about racism, we talk about slavery, we talk about this, that, and the other. The one thing that we don't really talk about and I think the primary issue is supremacy. It's supremacy that continues on. It's supremacy that brought us Jim Crow after the emancipation. It is supremacy that maintains this whole idea about some people being more worthy than others, or some people being less worthy. It is supremacy that I think really should become the focus of this whole idea about bringing about the end of racism. We're always going to have that racial perspective, just as was mentioned. We're not going to become colorblind. There's always going to be something there. There's always going to be this person, that person, this or the other. But the thing that makes the major difference is supremacy, the idea of supremacy.
First of all, I want to commend you, Pat, for bringing up such a hot topic. I want to give you a French quote. Everything is political. Second, there is a point in the 8th principle that really touches me. It talks about eradicating racism in ourselves. Because I catch myself and, I'm not a racist, but I catch myself having thoughts that are, wait, of course they're equal. Of course, because I was the product of colonial France. I lived in Madagascar for years, which is a French colony. We exploited, and I'm sorry to bring this up, we exploited Black people over there. We drained the blood out of them. Let's be clear. So when we say, oh yes, but we brought them so much, all the infrastructure and this and that is bull. So I'm sorry, this makes me a little angry, but we need to work within ourselves. And please read the book by Abraham Candy, How to Be an Anti-Racist. It is not enough not to be a racist. We need to be anti-racist.
Amen.
Another book I'd recommend is Caste, which, I've been aware of racism all of my life, but it opened my eyes to some things that I had no idea about. Like the fact that Hitler was looking to the segregated South for ideas.
Same with our apartheid of South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, and South Africa as well. So there's a lot there. Being in the public eye, I know you get a lot of trash thrown at you.
Sometimes, yeah.
When I wrote for The Observer, I would get things. I was accused of being a traitor to my race, which I was so proud of. But it was nothing like what some of my colleagues got. My colleague Fanny Flono, who is Black, received vicious, demeaning hate mail every day. And I saw some of it and I wondered how she could go on. But she knew what she was doing was important, and it's important that we all do our part.
Yeah, I agree. Come on, Sue.
I sent Fanny Flono my Shirley Chisholm button from that race, 1972. I grew up in Louisiana in the 50s and 60s before any of this. I'm not a racist. No, I'm trying not to be racist.
There you go.
We have to keep trying to correct ourselves as we go along. That race in particular, I worked a poll. Well, I first went down to the Manger Inn here in Charlotte, and I walked in and everybody was Black except me, and they went, "Ooh, we could use you." And I thought, oh, okay. Whatever. I stood next to a George Wallace poll worker when I was there handing out Shirley Chisholm literature. And you know what? We got along. It was okay. He gave me a look, and you all know the looks you get when you are where you're not expected to be. And this was 1972. So anyway, but I hope Fanny still has the button because I treasured it.
I think I've told this story before, but I know some of you weren't here when I told it before. A guy in the last congregation I served who grew up in New Hampshire said to me, "Why do white people sing 'We Shall Overcome'? And we are going to sing it before we leave here today." And I said, "Well, I don't understand the question." He said, "Well, it's not white people's song. It's Black people's song, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you about my history." And I told him some of the stories you've already heard today, but I also told him that when I campaigned for Harvey Gantt, I was absolutely berated I was registering voters for Harvey Gantt, and I was absolutely berated by this man. And he said things to me I would never dare repeat in a context like this. But he said some of the same things that Dylan Roof said before he killed those people in Charleston. And he said some of the things that you can find on white supremacist websites today. And he said some of the things that this guy that Tucker Carlson interviewed on the 27th of October says about Black people. And when I told that story to my friend from New Hampshire, he said, "Oh, so you've experienced for 5 minutes what Black people experience every day." Right. Anybody else? Come on, Doug. Sorry about your foot.
I know, me too. Yeah, in the 60s, I was with a singing group. We had a band, and we were all white. And we decided to, at the time, the term integration. We did it in the 60s, which was unheard of there. But it was unbelievable. I think music, back in that time period, Four Tops, Temptations, and so forth, you started seeing white people, they were being more, the music was bringing everybody together. You see dances, and you see people dancing, Black and white dancing together. You wouldn't see that, but music was what was bringing everybody together. And we ended up with a great band. We won the Battle of the Bands of Rock Hill, South Carolina. And we were on stage with, at one time with James Brown. That's right. And our lead singer was named Bo Brown. Okay. So we're having breakfast, And James asked Bo, he says, are we related? And Bo says, nope, but I'm a better singer than you. And he was. But music brings everybody together.
Music has made a tremendous difference. When the president fired General Brown as chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he said he was a DEI appointment, I happened to be in a church service with one of my black colleagues in Rutherford County, and we were walking from the sanctuary back to get refreshments, which is a wonderful tradition. And he looked over at me and he said, he was a 20-year veteran of the Navy, and he looked over at me and he said, no 4-star general is not qualified to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. My hat that Larry and Regina gave me that says make racism wrong again is actually in the back of my car. I forgot to bring it in today. That was pretty stupid too. But people see that hat, man. You talk about reactions. Make racism wrong again. Okay.
Teresa's going to play for us again. Lucky us. This fellowship is important to us all. The contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation and to reach out to our community, both nearby and in the larger world. Your giving affirms our commitment to each other and to the community. I urge the viewers at home to switch briefly to the main page of our website and just hit the donate button to join with the in-person members. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. We are also grateful to all the people who make possible our Sunday services, our various community activities, and presenting us to the outside world via newsletter and YouTube. That includes all of you who cheer us on in this beautiful space today or in your recliner at home. Please note the announcements in your order of service. I believe Linda is going to make an announcement.
The ad for money. It's a commercial time. We're going to be doing this all through November, making a little speech about the pledges. I think all of you, except for the two guests that are here for the first time, not going to hit you up for money yet. If you come back a few times, maybe. But anyway, I think most of you have gotten one of these about the pledge form and why the money is important to us, etc. If you haven't gotten one, let me know. Thank you. I guess that's it. And we're going to McAllister's for dinner afterwards. Join us if you can.
Thank you.
McAllister's no relation, but I like their food.
It always seems to work out that way.
One thing, everyone is welcome to join us at McAllister's in Cornelius after the service for dinner. We usually see an afternoon movie at Birkdale on Tuesday, anyone who is interested, followed by a snack across the street at Bricks. So come if you can. What we're seeing this week is Nuremberg, which is supposed to be excellent. The Heart of the Carolinas UU Animal Ministry, which builds fences and dog houses for dogs who would otherwise live outdoors on chains or tethers, is doing its next build on November 15th for Athena, an 18-month-old pocket bully, and her 4-month-old puppy, Oshi. You can also join the Heart of the Carolinas at Lincolnton's Holiday Parade on Sunday, November 30th, and the Denver Parade on Saturday, December 13th.
There's a correction to that. It should say December 6th for the Denver parade.
December 6th for the Denver Parade. Thank you. Our regular second Thursday gig at Feed NC will be November 13th from 10:30 to 2:30. For information, contact Jim Arnold, and his email is in your order of service. The UU Justice NC community meets every Friday morning at 11 via a Zoom link, and the Reverend Lisa Garcia Sampson and her knowledgeable guests provide context and history for the injustices burdening some of our neighbors, or measures proposed in the state legislature. And on Sunday, December 7th at 4 p.m., the Humanists of Lake Norman will have their quarterly gathering here in this room at 4 p.m. after the service. That's December 7th.
Just a plug for the website calendar. Those are all on the website calendar.
They're all on the website calendar, which is so useful.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, our closing song is number 169, We Shall Overcome. we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall all be free someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. Our closing words come from Veronique Singerman. She said, we have to become anti-racist. It's not enough to simply say, I'm not a racist. We have to become anti-racist. And our closing words come from the emotion you heard in Greg Davis's voice. Greg Davis is such a reasonable person. He's such an even keel when he gets up here to speak. But today, you heard a tremor in his voice. And I hope you take that tremor away from here today with you. And our closing words come from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, injustice for any is injustice for all. And he loved to quote the prophet Amos, who said, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Amen.
Amen. We close our service by extinguishing the light in the chalice and saying together the words in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.